This is episode 717, and I'm Greg Swanson. Today we're going to be talking about how to think like a ninja. One of the martial arts that I participated that I enjoyed so thoroughly was Bujinkan, which is basically ninjutsu. And it's such a great martial art because it really, like all martial arts, it works the body and the mind and the spirit, your soul, and your emotions. So it covers all the bases. But what I really liked about Bujinkan, it was this stealthness about it. Like a lot of other martial arts are out there, but this one was the stealth and how to blend in and how not to be seen, and that can come in so handy. So today we're going to start to go through that. But let me ask you, what if you could move through life like a shadow, right? Calm, focused, and two steps ahead of everyone else. And what if pressure didn't rattle you and chaos didn't touch your center? Kind of like the center of a storm, you're the center of that hurricane or tornado. In this episode, I'm breaking down the secrets of how to think like a ninja. This is not some movie cliche, but real world, battle tested mental strength that gives you an edge in business, relationships, and in life. So let's get to it. So let's break it down here. Ninjas weren't the biggest guys in the room. They just weren't. The samurais were a lot bigger. Ninjas were a little bit smaller. And I know this is generalization, but typically speaking, the ninjas weren't the biggest in the room. They weren't there showing off and jumping around and doing all sorts of things. They just blended with the background. But they were strategic killers when it came to mental control, adaptability, and patience. To think like a ninja, it means operating with silent confidence. You don't seek validation, you execute, period. In corporate world and actually even in regular world, we look for validation from how many likes we have and how much recognition can we have and all the other stuff that brings attention to us, which actually feeds our ego, which then says we want more. But when you have silent confidence like a ninja, you just execute, you just do it. You show up, you do it, and you know you do a good job intrinsically, and you know the quote reward for whatever that is will happen. So you don't need that validation. And imagine going through your work or going through your workout or going through other things and just you have that confidence and you just execute, wipe your hands, drop the mic, walk off stage, whatever that is, right? You don't need that validation. And that's the ninjas were silent. Nobody saw them. Nobody knew who they were, as opposed to some other warriors out there that were in battle and yelling and screaming and pounding their chests and all that. The ninjas weren't, but they had this self-confidence that was unstoppable. That also means that you have strategic patience when you think like a ninja. You know when to wait, you know when to move, and you know how to stay deadly while doing nothing. Now, this may sound like we're going into battle, but if you look at it from a corporate perspective, when you're working on a project or you want to get promoted, you know when to wait. You know when to let everybody else speak up and chime and show their feathers and their peacock and all the other stuff. And you just let them do that. And then you wait and wait and wait. Then once they've exhausted themselves, then you move. You move with that silent confidence. And then when you're waiting, right, you're staying deadly, meaning that you know exactly what you do. You're sitting there, you're surveying the land, and then you act. That can be with sports, right? Whatever position you play, you sit there, you wait for a few things, you wait, and then you strike. Not always running around the field trying to chase a soccer ball or a football or a baseball or whatever that is, right? You're not running all over. You're standing there ready to strike. And when the time comes, you strike. So that's strategic patience and radical adaptability, meaning you can pivot in real time without whining or overthinking. Again, business, right? You're working on a project. Your boss comes, says, "Oh, we have to change it." You go, "Great." Boom, you pivot and you just pick up the momentum and keep going. Others will sit there and whine and complain, and they'll do that for 2 or 3 days. And by the time they get around to it, you're already done with that project because you had adaptability. In NLP, we call it behavioral flexibility. This is something that is so important because, even, I climb mountains. So you're climbing a mountain, the path you have is broken or you can't get through it. So you just go around it. You do something else. You don't stand there and cry and like, why is this path blocked? I can't do this. I can't do that, right? No, you have this behavioral flexibility or radical adaptability to change with the moment, to change with what is going on. And when you change with it, you don't stand out. So this encourages that stealthness that is so important when you think like a ninja, in total presence. Once you're doing what you are doing, you are not distracted by noise, by sound, by anything. You are locked in at the moment. Unlike 99.9% of us out there, that once we start doing something, we're distracted by a text, we're distracted by an email, we're distracted by somebody talking to us, we're distracted, distracted, distracted. When was the last time that you really focused on one thing and one thing completely for 10 minutes? If you did, awesome. Now do that for 30 minutes. Because when we can practice our total presence, that comes in handy with meditation, when we're working out, when we're with a partner or significant other or a friend. When we are totally present, we're giving them that gift of ourselves. And when we are totally present doing something we love, we're giving that gift to ourselves. And so ninjas were totally present. They saw everything. They knew exactly where they were, and they were completely focused at the task at hand. And so visualize this, right? A man standing in the middle of chaos, or you're standing in the center of a hurricane, still, calm, and calculating. That's ninja energy, right? The hurricane or tornado is blowing all the way around you, and things are going, and cows are flying by, and houses and stuff, but you're there, you're centered. You're there, you're not distracted. That's what you want to bring to your daily life. That silent confidence, that strategic patience, that radical adaptability, and that total presence. You blend all of those together, and then you're beginning to think like a ninja. So let's hit the neuroscience for a second, right? When you think like a ninja, you're training your brain to activate your prefrontal cortex. That's the decision maker in your head. So you will be able to make decisions a lot clearer. It helps you pause, assess, and act with purpose instead of reacting emotionally. And mindfulness, box breathing, even silent observation, these all strengthen that mental muscle, which is all part of what we talked about previously on how to think like a ninja. Then there's the heart rate variability. If you haven't heard it, it talks about your heart rate variability as indication of how you manage stress. And it's your body's way of managing stress. High HR equals control. And I won't go into the science of it, but if you have a Fitbit, there's an indicator there that shows your heart rate variability on that. Low HRV equals chaos, meaning you're upset, you're turbulent, the waters are whooshing around in your brain. And so then a high HRV equals control, right? Ninja style breathwork keeps your HRV dialed in. That can be box breathing, inhale 4, hold for 4, exhale 4, hold for 4. Or you can do some form of an in to the count of 7 and out to the count of 11, as long as your exhale is longer. But it's purposeful, it's focused, it's deliberate breath work that keeps your HRV dialed in. And finally, we're going to talk about cognitive flexibility. When you start to think like a ninja, right? We have the ability to shift paths in our brain, and our cognitive flexibility leads to behavioral flexibility. And that's your ability to shift gears quickly and smoothly. We It's good to have a goal and be set on it, but we don't need to be set on the path that gets us there. And when we have that flexibility, like, a project changes at work, a street gets closed, you can't do that. A restaurant you want to go to is closed. Whatever that is, we just shift gears. We don't sit there and pound the ground and pound the steering wheel and pound our desk and blah, 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 and make a hissy fit out of it. We just shift and we move on. And then science confirms what the ninja knew hundreds of years ago. Mastery starts in the mind. And that's what the whole purpose of this podcast, my coaching, my website is Warrior Mind Coach, mental strength coaching. Everything starts in the mind. And when you can start to think like a ninja, you will be able to affect your life in totality. So this is in theory, right? You can go look up the science if you want to, but you can apply ninja level thinking right now. Here's how. Neutral is the new power. Stop reacting to every trigger, right? A trigger is something that triggers you, right? So we want to learn how to respond instead of react, re-act, meaning we acted this way yesterday, the day before, so now we are reacting again. What we want to do is respond, and that is neutral. So we just want to stop, we just want to be neutral, pause, think, consider, feel, and then respond, right? And mastering the transition. Most people get lost between roles, right? And that can be as much as when you're home, you're a dad or a husband or a wife or a mother, and at work you're a CEO. And we want to make those transitions because a lot of people bring work home with them. They forget to take off their work hat, and when they're with their significant other, they forget to take off their mom or dad hat, and so they get stuck in these transitions where a ninja could transition between the different roles in their life very easily, so that what they brought to each role was total presence. I mean, imagine you being at work and you're totally at work. You don't have your mom hat, you don't have your dad hat, you don't have anything. You have your work hat, you have your CEO hat. You leave, you leave that at home, and then you come home and you're totally present as your significant other. That's all the hat you're wearing. That will make a huge change in all of your relationships, but that's mastering that transition. And then you train in the shadows, right? You don't perform for likes. This was really, really important with sales. Is yes, we're in sales, we want to close the deal, but we would practice in the shadows, if you will, practice at home. So when it came to closing the deal, we would just do it naturally. We would celebrate the victory, but we wouldn't do it to get high fives, and we wouldn't do it for the acknowledgement of others. We did it for the acknowledgement of ourselves. And that is true with your fitness, with your Facebook, all of it. Do it, train in the shadows. Imagine if you spent as much time as you did looking at how much influencing you're having to the actual craft that you want to become a master at. You would escalate your learning curve tremendously. So let's talk tactics, right? Here's how to build this mindset, right? Box breathing. Again, we talked about it. Inhale to a count of 4, hold to a count of 4, exhale to a count of 4, hold to a count of 4. Shadow walks. This is basically you want to make the least amount of noise as possible. Whether you're going in the forest, you walk very slowly, or you're in a crowded office or a crowded sidewalk, you just want to be very quiet and just move between the people. If you're walking like in New York, this is really fun to do, is you just go in between the people. You don't walk aggressively and push people out of the way. And the shadow walks is just slide by them, move and slide by them, and you use your peripheral vision to see what's ahead of you. You can do that on the trails as well. There's a lot of places you can do this shadow walk, but it's awesome to help build that confidence in moving between obstacles. Cold decision drills. So this really refers to taking cold showers, doing a cold plunge cryotherapy, and do some thinking afterwards. You could also do this if you were doing a HIIT training. Let's say you did a Tabata on the Aerodyne bike. You keep a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle or a math problem right next to you. You get off, you're exhausted. You try to do that problem right then and there. That will help you think under pressure. We usually don't train that because we don't know how to, but cold plunges, cold showers, cryotherapy, trying to do problems after a HIIT all work that decision making, because you do the HIIT, your heart rate's up there, your mind is racing, you're saying I'm exhausted, and then you have to fill out a Sudoku, a crossword puzzle, a math formula. You have to give your whole total attention there, which means you have to be calm and consider and thinking about what you're doing. This is a great drill to do. And then mental invisibility exercises. So we want to pretend how we can be invisible in our, with our mind. And that can be such things as meditation, maybe journey work, maybe some other things where we practice being invisible mentally. And again, that can be, like I said, walking down through a street and just maneuvering around people, pretend like you can't be seen. And this can help, and this may seem like, oh, that's kind of corny, but these things do come in handy to make it to face any obstacles that come up in life. And then these are just habits, right? These are weapons for you to live a full, complete life, because these things are all taking back control of your life, right? One of the C's of mental strength is control, and we can practice this box breathing, the shadow walks, the decision drills, the invisibility exercises. We are controlling ourselves on how we want to be perceived or not perceived in life. And it's not always good to be seen. We want to lay back. We want to see what's going on. We want to assess things, not necessarily out of some paranoia, but we want to see things so that how we can proceed. And this comes in handy if you're doing adventures outside, or even if you're in a crowded city. But let's be real, right? Most people today are too reactive, too loud, too soft. They fear silence. They chase validation. They drown in overthinking. So think like a ninja. You need to pause before responding. That split second is power. The FBI uses that a lot in their interrogations. They ask a question, then they shut up and they be quiet, quiet, quiet. Just because somebody asks you a question, it doesn't mean you have to answer it within a split second. You can take that pause. You can think about it. That pause means you have control of the conversation. You are in power of that. Detach from your identity. You're not your job. You're not your to-do list. You're the one who executes. You're not a salesman or a saleswoman. You participate in sales, right? You are not angry. I am not angry. I am feeling angry, right? So you're not your job. You're not your to-do list. We want to detach from those identities and then embrace stillness. Silence is the training ground, not something to escape. So when you're out walking, take the earbuds out, go in nature, listen to that, sit in silence in your car as you're commuting. Do that for a little bit and understand how powerful that silence is. You will start to hear, to feel things, which is your soul speaking to you, and those things will provide enlightenment on questions that you have about work, life, relationships. Mental strength isn't about never failing. It's about returning to center faster and cleaner than anyone else. So here's some final thoughts. Let's wrap this up. Your ninja mind is already there. You just haven't trained it yet. It doesn't require a new personality, just new patterns, stillness, strategy, and presence. Train in silence, strike with precision, and lead with unshakable confidence. If this is home and you'd like to go deeper, why don't you request your complimentary breakthrough session today? I can share with you my training secrets that I did with my martial arts, my mental training, and we can talk about what's going on in your life and how we can apply some of these mental aspects so that you can become that center of the storm and accomplish more that you want to. If you want to see the show notes on this podcast, you can visit warriormindcoach.com. While you're over there, you can find some more useful information in the with other podcasts and blog posts. Since you'll be on the internet, please follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, all under Warrior Mind Coach.